Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating theological lecture by Dr. Gary Meadors. We're going to break down how believers actually navigate the mysterious forces of God's will. And we're tracking this massive concept all the way from the internal, day-to-day workings of our own thoughts right out to the grand orchestration of the entire cosmos. It's quite literally a journey from the micro to the macro. So together, we're going to take some incredibly complex theological ideas and make them accessible, structured, and hopefully really easy to grasp. Let's get into it.
So let's kick things off with a question that, let's be honest, almost every single person asks at some point. How do we really know God's will? I mean, instead of looking up and waiting for a literal booming voice from the sky or, handwriting on the wall, how do we actually figure out what we're supposed to do in our daily lives when we're facing tough decisions? It is a huge question, and Dr. Meadors' lecture tackles it head on.
To get to the bottom of this, here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with our own internal guidance, then define how providence actually works. After that, we'll tackle the problem of evil, explore the boundaries of the secret things, and finally, discover how to rest in the unknown. All right, Section 1, Internal Guidance, the mind, conscience, and the spirit. This is where we start at the micro level of human decision-making. I absolutely love the analogy Dr. Meadors uses for this. He says there's no blue phone to God on your desk. And honestly, wouldn't it be amazing if there were? Just a direct hotline you could pick up to skip all the hard work of making choices and just get a personalized revelation for every single decision. But God doesn't treat us like robots. Instead, he expects us to use our transformed minds and his revealed word to figure out life's issues. We're meant to think, to research, and to apply a biblical worldview to whatever situations we face. And this is absolutely crucial, because it shifts the whole burden from just sitting around passively waiting to active, mindful living. Think about the internal dynamics going on inside your head right now. On one hand, you've got your conscience. That's that internal, critical awareness that causes you a sort of mental pain when you violate your own values. But on the other hand, we have the Holy Spirit, the divine witness that convicts us based on a biblical worldview. Now, both of these forces are operating simultaneously in the mind to convict us. And because they both use our worldview and our values as their reference point, well, it's nearly impossible to perfectly distinguish whether a feeling of conviction is purely your own human conscience speaking or the Holy Spirit's direct prompting. They're deeply intertwined, and they both ultimately point us right back to doing our homework and studying the scriptures. Moving right along to Section 2, Defining Divine Providence. Zooming out to the macro level, we're shifting gears from personal guidance to the orchestration of all human history. First things first, let's clear up some theological jargon. Sovereignty. It's a noun. It simply describes the nature of who God is. It essentially defines his absolute status as the supreme ruler. Now, the vital contrast you need to understand here is that while sovereignty is who God is, providence is how God acts. It's an adverbial concept. Providence is the active, functional domain of God intervening or permitting events in our physical world. It's his irresistible action orchestrating history behind the scenes. So the real anchor point for this idea is found in this ancient text from Job. I know that thou canst do all things, and that no purpose of thine can be restrained. Literally, absolutely nothing falls outside of this divine control. Dr. Meadors makes this really striking point. He says, even if a devastating meteor were to hit the Earth today, it would not take God by surprise. It would still fall entirely under the umbrella of his providence. Realizing this is foundational, kind of changes everything, because it frames our entire understanding of universal control. Now, as you can imagine, theologians have debated how this actually works for centuries. You've got the classical view, championed by thinkers like Augustine and Calvin, which asserts that God knows and controls all things, meaning human free will is somewhat bound by his nature. Then, in contrast, you have open theism, which prioritizes absolute human freedom, suggesting God simply reacts to human choices without knowing all things in advance. Dr. Meadors aligns himself with the classical view here, noting that while open theism might offer some seemingly easier answers to tough questions, the easy answers aren't always the right ones. Which brings us to Section 3, the problem of evil, confronting the negative realities of providence. It's time to face the hardest, most painful part of this whole topic. Because providence isn't just about good things happening. Yes, for sure, there is positive providence. Things like blessings, career success, or physical healing. But we have to acknowledge the very heavy reality of negative providence too. We're talking about horrific, devastating events. Tsunamis in the Pacific, hurricanes sweeping through Florida, diseases like MS or cancer, or a brilliant young scholar dying right in their prime. These negative realities are also permitted within God's sovereign decree. And man, that forces us to completely rethink our assumptions about what divine protection actually looks like. When we're staring down these tragedies, it's incredibly flippant to just shrug and say, well, God did it, blaming him for our mistakes or just writing off a natural disaster. The reality is that God frequently utilizes what are called secondary causes. Basically, he often lets the natural laws of the universe and human actions just play out without miraculously intervening to stop the pain. Dr. Meadors points out that even when Jesus was physically walking the earth, he chose not to intervene in the execution of John the Baptist. God's norm is to allow life's secondary causes to occur. Okay, Section 4, The Secret Things, Establishing the Boundaries of Human Knowledge. When terrible things happen, we as humans have this desperate, burning need to declare why. Why did COVID-19 spread across the globe? Why did that tsunami hit those specific islands? Were the people there being judged for something? Dr. Meadors strongly cautions us here. He says that making declarations like that is vastly overstepping our boundaries. We simply do not have the divine insight required to correlate natural disasters with specific cosmic judgments. We just don't. There's a verse, Deuteronomy 29:29, and it draws a hard, undeniable line in the sand. The secret things belong unto Jehovah our God, but the things that are revealed belong unto us. God's sovereign actions, those deeper whys of history, they remain his secret. They belong entirely to him. What belongs to us is the revealed moral law so that we can obey it. Our job is obedience to what is written, not, cracking the code of the secret machinery of the universe. So, how do we put this into practice? Well, here are some ground rules. First, do not demand to know the future. God isn't waiting to hand you a crystal ball so you can play director. Second, remember that we are recipients of God's actions, not authoritative declarers of his hidden motives. Third, we need to focus strictly on the revealed well, the Word. And finally, honestly, knowing the future is highly overrated. Just look at the Apostle Paul. He was explicitly told he would be arrested if he went to Jerusalem, and he went anyway. Why? Because he was focused on obedience, not self-preservation. And that leads us to our final points. Section 5, Resting in the Unknown, Living with Theological Tension. How are we supposed to actually live with these massive unanswered questions? Well, it starts with understanding who God is. In the ancient Near Eastern context, God is described as the shepherd king. And this is a profoundly comforting metaphor. It offers a place to rest your mind even when terrifying secondary causes strike. Dr. Meadors shares this harrowing anecdote of a friend who was trapped in a dangerous car wreck. His vehicle was crushed, he was smelling gasoline, entirely helpless. In that moment of utter inability to change his circumstances, he had to simply rely on the fact that God is the shepherd king, resting in his arms even amidst absolute chaos. And this is a real game changer right here, the vital distinction between comprehension and understanding. As human beings, we naturally want to comprehend everything, right? We want the exact why behind all cosmic operations. But that is completely impossible. What is possible, however, is understanding. We can grasp the biblical assertions left for us, we can recognize our human limits, and we can choose to trust the shepherd king even when the grand design is way beyond our mental reach. Understanding this distinction is what finally allows us to let go of anxiety and actually find some peace. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final thought. When life's hardest moments hit, and they will, what are you going to do? Will you demand impossible comprehension, endlessly fighting the unrevealed secrets of life? Or will you choose to trust the revealed word of the Shepherd King? It's a profound choice, and it dictates exactly how we navigate this entire journey, from the quiet whispers of our own conscience all the way out to the grand orchestration of the cosmos. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.